You have the top 5 best gaming CPUs can get on the market in 2024. Now this is solely based on performance in terms of gaming use and also standard use in terms of basically watching YouTube videos, streams, and even basic renders. And what's nice is this list also includes AMD's new Ryzen 9000 series which was recently released. So this list is very up to date and does have some good reasons and some reasons you should not go for these CPUs as well. So let's get straight to what you need to know. Number 5, we have the AMD Ryzen 7 5700X3D. Now of course, for most that do not know, this is an AM4 socket CPU, which means yes, this is going to be a good option for a lot of users that are still on the AM4 platform. Now of course, when it comes to AM4, the motherboards are a lot cheaper than AM5 sockets, which is a good plus. And also, when it comes to AM4, there are more options out there, which means you do have a nicer option in terms of going for a nice look in terms of motherboards. Now the CPU does include 8 cores, 16 threads, a base clock of 3 GHz, and a boost clock of 4.1 GHz. Now one of the main things that people might not like about this is you can't really overclock with the CPU, which is a big turn down for a lot of users. Now for most of you that are wanting to know, this CPU does require about 105 watts, which is actually one of the lower ones on this list. Now the reasons why people do like the CPU a lot is, well, it does give you a good performance all around in terms of everything with gaming, renders, and so much more. Now, one of the reasons why you should not go for the CPU is mostly because it can run a bit hot, which can be an issue for a lot of users. But if you do have a good environment for the CPU, then you should not worry about this at all. Now, the pricing for the CPU is over $200, so it is at a decent range. Now, going to number 4, we do have the best high-end CPU currently on the market, which is the all-new AMD Ryzen 9 9950X. Now, of course, this CPU has a lot in terms of performance and just overall power. Now, the CPU also does have 16 cores, 32 threads, a base clock of 4.3 GHz, and a boost clock of 5.7 GHz. And what's nice, you can overclock with the CPU. Now, the CPU does require up to 170 watts, which is obviously going to require you to have a bigger power supply, which actually makes sense because, well, this is a high-end CPU. Now, one of the main reasons why people recommend this is because it does really well in terms of multi-threaded performance, which is a big plus, especially if you are going to be using this besides for gaming, but also for renders. Now, of course, one of the reasons why people do not recommend the CPU is because when it came out, there was issues and was underperforming. But after Windows 11 releasing a new update, it did actually fix this issue. It just shows you that Windows 11 was actually the cause of this performance issue in terms of AMD's new CPU. If you're wanting to know the pricing of the CPU, it's going to be priced at over $620. Now, going to number 3, we do have a CPU that is classed as the best mid-range CPU, which is the AMD Ryzen 7 7700X. Now, the CPU does include 8 cores, 16 threads, a base clock of 4.5 GHz, a boost clock of 5.4 GHz, and it does also include overclocking. Now, what's nice about the CPU, it does also have an eco mode, so it does run at a high 105 watts and as low as 65 watts, which is actually a good option with the CPU. Now, reasons why people suggest the CPU is mostly, well, it does have a good eco mode, and also it just has a good hit in terms of allowing you to access all your cores and all your functions, which is a nice plus. Now, the reasons why people do not really recommend the CPU is because it does lag in terms of going against Intel's latest CPUs. Now, the pricing for the CPU is around about $300, which is actually not too bad for this type of CPU. Number 2, we do have the best budget CPU for gaming, which is the Intel Core i5 13400F. Now, this does include up to 10 cores and 16 threads. It does have a base clock of 2.5 GHz and a boost clock of 4.6 GHz. Unfortunately, you can't overclock the CPU, which can be an issue for a lot of users, but if you don't really overclock your CPUs, then you don't have to worry. Now, the reasons why people do recommend the CPU is because it does give a good performance in terms of gaming. And the fact that you do have a decent amount of cores does give you a good plus. And also, you do have a nice high clock speed, which can give you a good performance in terms of gaming and renders. Now, the reasons why people do not suggest the CPU as well, one, it does a high power draw, which obviously the CPU does require at least a max of 148 watts, which can be a big issue for a lot of users. Now, of course, another one is that, well, it doesn't have a good performance in terms of AMD's cheapest Zen 4 CPUs, which is based for content creation. Now, the pricing for the CPU is around about $160, so it's actually one of the more cheaper options on this list, but also it does lack in some performance, which is something that might hinder your decision. Now, going to what is considered the best gaming CPU you can get on the market currently is the AMD Ryzen 7 7800X3D. Now, the CPU does include 8 cores, 16 threads, a base clock of 4.2 GHz, a boost clock of 5 GHz. You do have overclocking with the CPU, and it requires 120 watts, which is actually a decent ground. Now, reasons why people do recommend the CPU is, well, it's very good at gaming performance, it is very super efficient, and runs extremely cool, which is a nice thing to have when it comes to your gaming system. Now, the two reasons why people do say it's not a good option to go for is a higher price compared to the i5 13600KF, and also is not as good in terms of other things besides gaming. But if you are mostly going to be using this for gaming, this is still going to be a good option. Now, the pricing for the CPU, which is around about $413, which is a hefty price, but it does have a good performance in terms of gaming. But otherwise, that's it for the list. Of course, all the pricings that were included in this video was based solely on some retailers, but of course you can get these CPUs for a cheaper price depending on what you're going to look at. But let me know in the comments below what CPU you are currently running with your setup, and also let me know what is your dream CPU to go for your dream setup. But otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.